see, for credit, the professor can, hypothetically speaking, of course, I'm not putting words into anyone's mouths, but the professor can give out extra credit and not have the student attend anything
Sure.
at all.
I just want to tell you that I can literally see Dr. Carrillo like ting 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 in the corner.
She's just dancing. She's ready to knock me out.
All right,
All
let's
right.
get started.
So yes,
Let
I
me-
already started recording.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Yeah. All right. So welcome everybody, Philosophy Club. You know, the one big announcement before we get into today's topic is, 1 week from today is the Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference, hosted right here by yours truly. We've already gotten submissions, they're rolling in, getting them from around here, getting them from other schools, getting them from 4 years. So yeah, pretty exciting so far. Still waiting on a couple submissions. But I'm sure
Question,
Mine, I have already two.
question for Professor Manzi. Do you want Orlando and I to submit some kind of a script or something, that the debate that we're gonna do for the what's it called, for the
I thought that was
No.
I thought that was going to be like a session, like the philosophy club session or something.
No, that was
No, no.
explicitly for the conference.
Yes.
We
Oh,
talked
so now I
about.
have to go do research. Oh,
Of course.
all right. Well, you have to write a script. You could just put it in the proposal. Just say we're going to
Okay.
talk about the topic. I know what you do. But having said that, we're going to end the conference on Tuesday with this philosophy club meeting. So whatever topic we choose for next week, that's going to be the conference topic. So something to consider later on. But all right, I mean, that's really what I want to plug. Aside from, again, look for us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We'll be making announcements about not just the weekly topics, but also, again, the conference. Yeah, if you have any questions on how to submit, feel free to reach out to me in the chat here, or you can email me, gmanzi@dccccd.edu. Happy to respond. It's a very painful process, the application process. It's a very easy thing to do. Even if you've never done it before, it's not intimidating, and that's by design. So yeah, I mean, you got nothing to lose. Why not? If you've ever been interested in, you know, maybe pursuing academia for a career, or you want to see what it's like in academia, this is a really awesome opportunity. It's very difficult to find undergraduate conference opportunities, research opportunities, especially at the community college level, and especially during a pandemic. So this is really a golden opportunity. It's the kind of thing that will stand out on your resume or your CV, precisely because it's so rare. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me. And again, if you're my student, you also know the additional incentives to apply. So yeah, I hope to see many more applications, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much. We both already sent the email from Mansi in case that you wonder in the chat. So just check, it's the same email. So with that being said, you know the drill, guys. If you want to participate, just text an exclamation mark, do a shout out, bully Mansi, and you get extra credit. You know everything is on the table. And with that being said, we're going to start our topic for today, which is limitation of freedom. I'm not completely sure yet how many of you are checking your emails, but in synthesis, what this implies is like, for us to have freedom, sometimes it means that we have to give up some part of our freedom. So until what point you give too much until it stop being freedom? Can you even have to really freedom if you have to set limitations like rules and stuff like that? That's the general idea of it, even though I'm kind of butchering it. And yes, I usually butcher it. That's what I do. I should become like how is it called? It's just a butcher in English, yeah. In Spanish, it's more like, more descriptive. I need to look for a different way to call the butcher. But anyways, with that being said, if any of you want to kickstart this meeting, feel free to do so. If not, I can always just do it myself. I will give a little bit of a couple of seconds. And yes, we have Yusha.
Yeah, sorry, I had a piece of chip in my mouth and I don't want to chew inside people's ears. So thank you for the awesome intro. Thank you for the topics, Professor Manzi. And so for today's topic, for this week's topic, in fact, we have the limitations of freedom. And by that, we mean, sure, everyone has freedoms, but to an extent. And I would like to open the conversation with Plato and his allegory of the cave, which is basically an ideology that that Plato had brought to the table, saying that we as people are chained to a wall, chained and facing a wall, and behind us there is other people with a fire, and they're basically controlling us or entertaining us with these shadows. So further on that, he goes to say that to those people, yes, they are free. They're free to watch or sleep or do whatever, as long as they're confined in that small compartment. And if anyone does break out and try to make the run for it, they would be too scared of what's outside and eventually come back to what is known to them, which is the cave. And to kind of show it better, let me do this. And can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
So this is basically what I'm talking about. These people here in the back corner, they're chained, and the only thing they can see is what happens on this wall, which is being controlled by these people in front of this fire. And these are the people that have managed to get out. Now, this person, he realizes the freedom he has outside in the open world. But out of the three, he's the only one. This guy, he dared to go at least to the entrance, but he's too scared, and this guy doesn't even want to go up. So this is this was what I had in mind when I had suggested the topic last week, that sure, we are free, but we are free within certain limitations. So I think Orlando is after me.
Yeah, he is. I'm not sure. I do want to say
Okay.
something very
Oh.
quick. Are you gonna speak about that allegory, Orlando? That's my question.
Little bit.
Okay, so this is fine. I wanted to expand on that idea, but if you're doing it, go ahead.
So yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the allegory of the cave, because the whole idea there is it kind of like puts freedom on this pedestal, where basically it's something that's, you know, so profound that you can find that it's almost blinding to you, you know, like the sun's light. But what I thought is kind of interesting about the allegory of the cave is that when he goes back in, Plato speaks of the people on the inside, and they think that guy is crazy. They think that guy is mad. They think he's lost his mind. And I think that's a perfect kind of analogy for like our society in general. Is like when you have too much freedom, when you practice yourself too freely, other people might think you're crazy. So then we kind of have to ask ourselves, is freedom in and of itself really, you know, is true freedom or is too much freedom really a good thing? Do we need these sort of social contracts, and do we need these sort of bylaws and sort of, you know, other moral connections to people essentially to govern us and to kind of have a baseline for ourselves? You know, when you have people like, you know, Rousseau and then John Locke, you know, they say yes. Even I would say Hobbes, because in a sense, I think most people they're very selfish or self-preserving, and so if a bunch of people are just acting in their own nature, then nothing in society can ever get done. You know, that's a very basic way of looking at it, but I'll let you guys expand on it.
Yeah, I that even though complete freedom seems like, and for some entities, like the ultimate goal, I don't think necessarily is too good because like you said, it's hard to progress as a society as if everybody's just doing whatever they feel they can do. And when it comes to freedom, there is not just positive freedom, there is also the other side of the freedom that is not that good individually. So it kind of like hinders your security, your safety as a life wise, which it can damage overall, not just you but everyone around you. So with that being said, I know Juana is next, so go ahead. Juana, Isabel, Juana Contreras, are you
I don't
there?
know. I'm thinking about
Cannot
that.
hear
Song.
you.
I'm thinking about that Juana song.
Yeah, Juana.
Well,
I'm
Juana.
not sure if your mic is working.
Yeah,
But
that's what I was gonna say.
if
If
it
your
is
mic
not,
is muted.
it's fine. We are gonna move to Ye, and you can speak whenever your mic is working, or just text if you cannot talk. So yeah, you're next until we fix Juana. Mike.
Okay, this is my turn. Okay. You know, my English is not very good enough, so sometimes I cannot express my idea clearly. So I just said my views. I think we have no absolute freedom. Never. Freedom for us is limited. If you have, I just think, if you have more freedom, but to other people, our freedom for other people probably is press for them. So you have a lot of freedom, but for other people, my idea is you push the boundary to others just for yourself freedom. So how to say it? I think freedom is a big topic. So we have no absolute freedom. So but for the reality, we always say freedom. We have freedom. We should have freedom. But no, if everyone has absolute freedom, it's equal. We have no freedom. No, and we have to push other people and price. You know, I want to express. We probably will give them pressure. So freedom. How to say it? Freedoms first. How we name the freedom. If we say freedom, we should enter the legislation. The freedom enters legislation. So important. What is the system of legislation or system of law is important. If we have no legislation or laws, we have no freedom. No, I don't believe if we have freedom without law. This is my opinion, I think. And I believe the Plato curve, I believe and support Plato cave theory. This is very great theory.
I see. I see. Thank you so much. It is always so interesting for me that you address your lack of proficiency in English and then you explain yourself very decent enough. So I will advise you to have a little bit more credit to yourself and your English. With that being said, as user was asking on the text, there is a very good point. Juana mentioned it. She's saying that she has a question about freedom. Are we really free? I mean, from the beginning of time, even nomadic tribes had to follow a source of food. Is there something beyond our need to survive dictating what we do? I do like that comment a lot because it is something that people sometimes kind of like miss from freedom, which is kind of like sometimes we are even subjected to our basic needs. You cannot survive without food. So let's say you want to just not eat, but you still need to eat to survive. So you are somehow free of doing just whatever you want if you want to survive. So you have to kind of like pick and choose. So yeah, I don't think that there is truly freedom, like complete freedom. I don't think it is. And if there is anything, I don't think it can work. And I know that you shall also want to kind of like chime in into it. And then it's Orlando's turn.
Thank you. That was actually a great question, and that was actually very well put. Jie, I think that's how I say your name. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but coming back to the question, Joanna had questions actually, and as far as the human nature goes, it's all of it can be described in 3 Fs: to fight, to feed, and to mate. In this case, FFM, but I cannot say the explicit word that we usually do. But that is all that is in human nature: to fight, to feed, and to mate. So outside of that, anything is not our instinct at that point. It's in my opinion, it's our need for more. It's like being greedy at that point, and it can be. And an economist, Felipe van Parijs, I think I say it. He is a German economist, and he said that to have real freedom, a person has to have 2 things. The first one, not to be prevented from acting on their will. And the second is possess the resources or capacities actually to carry out their will. For example, this would not contort to his ideology if I say that I want to fly, but I don't have wings. So this is not freedom. If I say I want to run and I have legs and I can run, that is true freedom, according to Felipe van Parijs. So yeah, that's what I wanted to. Okay, she said, Joanna said her microphone is now working. And you're fine, Rory. We're just starting. And I think, Orlando, you're after me. And then we have Jie.
Yeah.
Let me just respond quick to those 3 Fs. Aren't you free to abstain from all of that? I mean, you're capable of not eating when you're hungry. You don't have to mate. I mean, I think that's kind of where maybe freedom begins to form. You realize I'm not completely determined by these maybe biological drives, that I can separate myself from those. That's very free. Throwing it out there.
Manzi, I don't think you're necessarily free in terms of mortality, because if you stop eating and you say, just because I don't want to eat, you're going to die. So it's, to what extent is that really free? It's not really.
Go on a hunger strike, make a point.
You're going to die. All right.
But it's your choice.
But that's not.
It is a choice. It is. I understand what you're trying to bring. It's kind of
So
like you
freedom-
still have a say. You're not subjected to do it if you don't want to, because you have the option of choosing not to do it, knowing if you are like decisive enough that in doing so you're gonna die earlier. But you can have that option if you want to exercise it as your freedom.
So it seems like you guys are kind of colluding freedom and choice as the same thing. I don't think that's necessarily the same thing. I see freedom more as the ability to have done otherwise. Like,
But
as in,
we're
like,
not
you have
saying
you
that.
can
We're
freely, as in, you can freely eat and still be okay. I mean, not eat and still be okay. You have the ability to not do it. That's kind of how I see freedom.
What I am understanding, and what at least I'm meaning, is that part of freedom is the option for you to choose something outside of your basic needs. Is the
That's
option?
not. I don't think that's. I wouldn't define
You
that.
wouldn't. So how would you define it then?
Because freedom is more just like having.
So it is
Essentially
not based on some
being-
sort of decision. Then.
Being able to come outside of essentially a limit that you're within, being able to essentially come out of that. Not
And how do
necessarily
you do that?
like you're putting it in terms of like maybe a humanistic stance of like my biological needs and so on and so forth. But I think when it comes to freedom, and I mean things when it comes to limits, it's not necessarily just like biological or even just my fight and feed, so on and so forth. It's like also social constructs that I have with other people. I might choose to do otherwise because of peer pressure or because I want to be accepted, so on and so forth.
So you choose.
But to kind of get away from this, because I didn't really want to talk about that.
I'm
Uh,
over Orlando.
I'm more interested in like the idea of like, where do we draw the limit of peace and oppression? Because, you know, you have libertarians and progressives who might disagree, you know, like that quote Yusha used earlier, you know, the freedom to do your own will. Well, businesses might say, oh, well, I don't want any regulations because I want my business to thrive. So if I want to dump this in this swamp or whatever, if I want to dump it in this ocean, that's my freedom. And so then other people are going to say, well, no, you need to give that freedom, quote unquote, up because it's better for the environment. You know, it's essentially more important to the society. And so, you know, you take a simple idea like that, and where do you draw the line to say, well, this is what freedom, encroaching on freedom is, and then where is this keeping peace? Because if you take that line too far, you get dictatorships, and then if you loosen that line too far, then you get complete chaos. So it's like, where do you draw this almost this perfect middle, essentially, or is it just this basic instinct that we all as people have, like a rationale? Like when we gather and when we're together and we make relationships, is that how we kind of develop real rationality? Like, oh, we ought to act like this because I know this because I've been with all these people. You know, where does it get drawn? That's my question.
So when you were referring to the collusiveness between oppression and true freedom, that kind of brought back Sartre from when I had Manzi's class, and a quote from him that said, "Never were we freer than we are." No, what? Never were we freer than under the German occupation. So with that, see, the German occupation was oppressing on people's freedom. And they were not allowed to do this, they were not allowed to wear that, they were blah, 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 and whatnot. But as they came out of that, they found that, oh, we are free to do this. Oh, we are free to trade. Oh, this is our, these are the things that we can do. And what you were referring to with the factory and dumping all that plastic, sure, it is their freedom. And even if they practice that, it is the people's freedom to limit that factory's freedom of dumping stuff into the water bodies by not buying their products, by injecting a loss into the company.
So, but at the same time, that gets into like a whole other. There's so many other factors with that. You know, you could have things like, you know, disinformation, where essentially the business may pay certain people to turn the other way in terms of like actually outputting the news. And so that's why you can argue for things like, oh, well, that's why we have regulation. That's why that's important. That's a whole different conversation. But I think Juana asked a very important question. I think it was really good. Could it be that freedom is not an option as much as a acceptable satisfaction to accept a normal? That freedom was not ever rationally viable? What do you guys think?
I think that G has something to say. She's next in line. So yeah, you're up.
Still, it's my turn.
Yes, it is.
Yes, I very agree with Professor Manzi. Yes. So when we say freedom, we say it is important for our people. So living condition is the first, is basic condition for us. If without food, without some basic living condition, we cannot live on the earth. So the first issue we should consider about is freedom to live. How to we freedom our right to live. So the freedom we said we have a free choice to have this different system to live. So we have a freedom to work. We have freedom to think about the freedom of the living rights is the basic. So how to see the freedom? This is basic. For the next one or higher level, the high level is we have freedom of thinking. Actually, most of time we see freedom, probably the freedom I understand is free to speak, free to, our mind is free, but we probably ignore the basic issue. We have free. We should have free select rights to live. So freedom, how to, I just think how to choose, how to select our rights to live. I think when we, freedom is connected with our system, with living. We just, for my opinion, I focus on the freedom live. This is basic. This is basic, I think. Probably I just think of this. So
I was muted.
that's it.
All right. Well, thank you again. Yes, I was about to address that question. Juana, again, dropping bomb on the text. Hopefully you all can read it. She's saying that freedom to live, work, or live, sorry for my English, do I even speak it? In general, is dictated by our nature to survive. Hence, again, does freedom exist as much as the option to pick an option? So can we really do a freedom that is not on our capability of like seeing or something like that? I'm kind of like understanding something like that. But with that being said, I'm just kind of like leaving it up to Rody, who is next.
Let's see. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Rory.
All right. So, I think before what I'm going to say, I think we're sort of hitting a dichotomy between micro systems and macro systems of what freedom is. So I think what I'm going to say is going to be that meso system. So I sort of, in terms of my life, I sort of take like a social work perspective on life, I guess you can say. And the reason why I was late today was it actually sort of goes into the whole limitations of freedom. So some of you may know that I am disabled. Now, being that's the case, for me, in the law, I have the freedom to disclose whether or not somebody, to tell somebody I'm disabled. However, depending on how that person responds, that could either enhance or limit the relationship, which could either enhance or hinder my perception of freedom. So you have what I would say a hierarchy of freedom, depending on your relationship with the situation. So like in terms of a biological standpoint, okay, I have the freedom to go say, okay, I need help in order to meet my primary needs of safety. However, in a social construct, if I say I need help because my disability is preventing me from doing something, then there could be a stigma to say, oh, well, Rory has this, therefore I'm going to treat him this way. So even though I have the liberty to disclose information, that's where the bridge between the micro and the macro come in. Yes, I have the freedom to talk about myself. However, when you bring other individuals in, that can either enhance or limit the relationship of freedom. So it really comes down to finding, and that's where you bring the micro biological system and the macro social government system. As an example, the reason why I was late today, I'm trying to get help. And my insurance company is being really stupid. So by announcing to the world that I'm disabled, then I have to come with the ramifications that because of my disability, people are going to assume that I'm not going to get the things that I need. Therefore, they think that I am not free in order to get the things that I need in life. So that's sort of my perspective on bringing that biological micro scale and that macro social government scale.
Again, there is a very insightful thought that you were there. And it is always, what did you say?
That was a very solid connection. I like how we bridged those two. Yeah, thank you, Rory.
Okay, so now I think Jusha is next, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. That was very well put together, Rory. And just a quick thing. I had said in the chat that we're talking about these human needs and our freedom, and in relation to those, everything in between. But as long as our basic human needs are met, do we even really need that freedom that is quote unquote promised to us? By that, I'm referencing that the illusion that is being fed to us via constructs of a society, of a group of people living together. Hey, if I'm fed, if I have shelter, if I'm safe, what else do I need in terms of my human existence? But when it comes to the illusion that is being shown to us that you have this, and this options, and these are your freedoms. So that gives me a sense that, hey, I can have more instead of finding shelter under a bridge. Now I find shelter in a concrete house. Instead of having to eat bread every day, now I get to eat McDonald's or whatever. So these are the things that are being fed or being portrayed. And don't get me wrong, I'm totally up for freedom. It's just someone has to play the devil's advocate and say that we don't need all these freedoms that are being presented. So in those regards, what I was going to say is, I guess I'm trying to put it in a more softer tone, saying that it's tougher than I expected. Okay, so imagine this society, right? This society that you're looking down upon, and you are in control. You decide what each person does and how they do it. So it refers to us that we are quote unquote free to do the things like go to school, attend this meeting, speak, whatever. But do we really need to? Because we do what we do to find or to ease our existence and to secure that furthermore. But we don't have a natural act for that. It doesn't come naturally to us. That's why people get like socially awkward when it comes to presenting their opinion or voicing what they think. People tend to shy away from that. So is this really us? Because as long as a horse, and I think I brought it up in the last meeting, my friend is a horse trainer in Saudi Arabia. He races horses and whatnot. Yes, he's rich. Yes, he has a lot of money. So with that, once he took me to his training facility and he said, see, we have these really long leads that are like, I think 40, 50 feet something. And they tie their horses to it. I said, why? He said, because as long as you give the horse the illusion that it has the freedom to run as far as he wants, he won't be a bother. He'll be trained. It's easier to get them to train that way. You give them food, water, shelter, and you give them this freedom, quote unquote, and they don't create much of a fuss. Is it the same thing with us? Because basic food items, if you've noticed, they are exempt from tax. We don't pay, when we buy it, we don't pay tax on those. We just pay the price that is listed. But anything that is luxury food or anything outside of those basic foods, we have to pay tax on those. And that is why I come to the conclusion that this this ideology of freedom is a false hope that is shown to us that, hey, if you do this, this, and this is what's waiting for you. So you better listen up or else.
Or else. I do want to bring something else before Mansi speaks. It's a question from Carrillo to you, Yusha. She said, "Are you feeling you are not free to play devil's advocate?" This kind of like joking matter.
to that real quick, I will say yes, because especially in this society, in the American society specifically speaking, people take their freedom as something personal. And I have to make myself clear time and again, because I have faced a lot of physical and verbal violence on such topics when it comes to politics, freedoms, their amendments to the US Constitution, and it has become violent in the past. So yes, I do feel the need to present my standpoint and the area that I'm coming from.
Oh, yeah, I don't think that was okay, but it's fine. Thank you for clarifying. But I don't think she was trying to do that. It's about the comment that you said that you needed to feel like the devil's advocate. But yeah, okay, Mansi, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to take it in a very different direction, but I do want to highlight. No, Yusha, I love the point you're making, and it's because earlier in the chat, somebody brought up the question of taught freedom, so freedom that you're conditioned to have, and then maybe something more like a natural freedom, given your nature or given the kind of organism we are. You might be that distinction, but it's interesting with your horse example because it's almost like the horse has a certain expectation of what signifies freedom to it. So if it can walk a certain way, I used to ride horses. So if it can walk maybe 30 or 40 feet, it thinks that it's completely free. And that's what its litmus test of its own freedom is. But of course, horses aren't rational. So it seems to be something more innate. I want to take it in a different direction though, because we're hitting we're almost approaching the end, in fact. So I'm teaching a class right now. I'm co-teaching a 6-credit class. It's a learning community with my old buddy, Professor Scoggin, interpreting the facts of freedom. And it's been a lot of 20th century philosophy from my end, which I'm rather partial to. But I would say this: let's consider freedom with regards to freedom of thought. And I want to get pretty abstract here. I want to talk about the connection between thought and language. So obviously you have no say in, into what culture you're born, and therefore what language you speak and becomes your native language. But I do feel as though language itself is limiting insofar as what you're able to express, how you're able to interact with the world. If there are some words in one language and different words in another language, you might not have access to that particular kind of expression. You would never really know that the world can be put that way, or that you could phrase something that way. And I think this connection between thought and language is important when it comes to freedom, because it does seem as though you're aware of your possibilities first by being able to kind of articulate them and give rise to them. Now, again, sadly, I'm not a polylinguist. I speak English and I do French academically. I know some Latin, but I always ask my students who know multiple languages, I mean, what is it like to go from one to the other? Is it like you're inhabiting 2 different worlds? Do you feel like you have a greater freedom of expression in one versus the other? And I don't mean expressing anything in particular, but just actual articulation of your thoughts itself. It seems like you can't have thoughts without language, arguably. And as such, the degree to which you're free to articulate anything is kind of reliant on the language itself. Fortunately, most languages are very malleable. They develop. Again, this is why we have Webster's Dictionary version 52. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of maybe take it in a more abstract direction, just for the moment. I mean, what do y'all think?
I think I love abstract ideas.
When it comes to more than one language, it is easier to express yourself, because right in the beginning, Ferdinando was trying to find a word that was a replacement, but he could not find it in English. And in Arabic, we have the same thing. If you give me one word in Arabic, it has tens of different meanings, how it's used, the tonnage, the words that are before and after it, the punctuation. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Yes. I do want to say something very short, since we still have like Orlando, then we have Carrillo, who is ready to scold us a little bit. So I do believe that you bring a point that I actually very much enjoy, which is the fact that there are sometimes even ideas or concepts that you are not able, that you can even think as a possibility until somebody brings it up. Like, and sometimes it's very simple stuff. Like maybe I'm gonna make something very basic just for the purpose of not extending this part too much, because we have other people trying to talk. But sometimes, like, if you have like a fan and you never think that you can just click with a remote, and then you have to like go there and click, and any other fan that you would see, you are gonna think that you have to like go there and think until somebody, maybe something like, you know what, you think that maybe with the stick you can just go from here, and then somebody has the remote, and then start like showing you the different options, and start like the aspect of how you perceive certain scenario, which I guess technically give you more choices to be free, even though you're still not completely free. But yeah, I'm gonna just leave it like that, and I'm gonna just go next to Orlando.
Ferdinando, you actually said something that kind of helped me kind of think out what I was going to say. It's kind of in relation to what Manzi was talking about. Basically, it seems like our nature is not one of freedom. It seems like we're constricted biological needs, our languages, like it's a certain structure to it that we essentially can't escape this humanistic way of thinking. But I think that makes me wonder, does freedom even exist in a vacuum? Does freedom even exist without the limits? The language, although it might seem limiting itself, it's a freedom of expression. It's how we express ourselves. So it looks like the more limits that we find in our nature is like the more options for freedom that we may have. Like how you were saying, Ferdinando, like this idea of me having to get up and like go touch the fan, that's sort of a restriction. But now I have the freedom to come up with a device that's going to shortcut that. So essentially, it seems like freedom and limits are something that are ever changing and ever essentially producing themselves. So then that makes me think, I was like, well, maybe there's not this idea of true freedom, and maybe we're not all the way limited, but essentially it's just this spiral, essentially, that they just are ever developing. And so when it comes to society and the limitations that humans have, I think a society where all humans are free to choose what's going to happen for the society, I think that'd have to be like a perfect society, which doesn't exist. So I think it really depends like on how much we're willing to limit as people ourselves, our freedom, and you have the freedom to limit yourself, and sometimes that's even seen as a more rational thought. So,
Yeah, kind of like a number, that one may think that 1 and 2 are next, but then if you really go into the 1 and 2, it's like infinite numbers. So it's kind of like freedom is constantly developing, and it's hard to really say that it's true freedom, because there's always a different version of that freedom that you can practice based on what you know. Now, let me sit straight. Let me get like a tie or something, because Carrillo is gonna speak. I need to pay attention. So go ahead, Carrillo.
Actually, I said I would pass because we're almost out of time, and I think there's a student or somebody else that wants to speak. So I have way too much, and I won't stop, and I'll get really loud. So I'll let the next person go. I will
This is
speak a
the
lot
thing.
next time.
This is the thing. We have run this meeting way over the
Oh,
time
have
limit.
you?
Feel free to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, we have been here like 5:30. Not kidding.
Okay. Well, okay. I'll bring in. Okay. Well, I don't even know where to start, but I thought it was very interesting to bring in, and I wasn't thinking about this at all when I did my exclamation mark, but thinking about the connection between language and thought. There's this guy named Lev Vygotsky, a social cultural kind of person, and he talked about the link between the two, and that actually informed in my early days of teaching how I taught. But I never thought about linking the concept of language and thought to freedom. And I think that is a very interesting thing to consider. I know that in virtue of studying philosophy, I was introduced to a community discourse, a way of talking, a way of making sense of my reality, my being, and my existence that I had never experienced. Definitely not in the Catholic Church, where you're told from the top down what to think, given roles, and all this other stuff. And so this was, for me, the language that I learned, the discourse that I learned through philosophy is a way of making sense of world, self, and others, expanded my imagination, metaphysically, epistemologically, ethically, morally, whatever. And I feel with that way of learning how to talk and how to think through these concepts I've never encountered before, that I am experiencing more freedom in creating myself. I would like, at least I feel like that. I was watching a movie, I think it's called Catherine. Isn't there some Netflix series called Catherine the Great or something like that? There's a scene where she's talking about, hey, there's this wave of women getting an education, you know, they're talking about this good stuff, you know, humanity and stuff like that, and that's a new thing. But they're talking about these things, these concepts, and it can lead to what some might call positive freedom versus negative freedom. That those concepts are related to political ideas of negative liberty and positive liberty. I don't want to really get into that, but I will say that we can talk about what might be called negative freedom in terms of, you know, that I am free of external threats, constraints, obstacles, so that I can have positive freedom, which to me goes hand in hand, of course, with positive liberty, to realize my full self. And I think this is where we see a vital role for philosophy and education to play, because they help us to make the most of our positive freedom with our positive liberty, and as we try to distance ourselves or make sure that we don't have any kind of negative, you know, constraints on our freedom, or at least less so. But I do think that we need rules. We need some kind of boundaries to experience any kind of positive freedom. I managed to get almost all of my thoughts in that.
Yeah, you see, you were limiting yourself instead of realizing that you have the actual freedom of using your time.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. The freedom to others to express their thoughts, but I'll hang up now so others can speak.
Freedom. There is one thing also, I'm not sure if she wants to speak about it, but Duala, she's requesting for Yusha to add more information on freedom and the price of food.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So he was speaking about freedom of food. I missed parts of that conversation, and he's provided me information, but I honestly, I don't see support for my question. He provided me the Texas Comptroller's website, and yes, I viewed that, and I'm aware, I think, on why there's taxes on food, but I don't see the freedom aspect of that. Freedom to choose whether you buy it or not, because the essential items are non-taxed. So I guess my perspective is that there are foods that do cost more, and we have a choice, freedom, if we want to buy them or not. So I asked for more information because I missed it. Where's the freedom in that?
No, thank you for asking that. The reason why I was linking the two was because earlier in the meeting I had brought up that if human needs are met, which is again being fed, being sheltered, and given security. So being fed is one of the major contributing factors of a person's freedom, or of what a person assumes to be their freedom. So these these food products that are not taxed, which is, if you look at them, almost all of them are given to us by nature, which is fruit, vegetables, sugar, flour, milk, eggs, and there's a bunch of other stuff in on the list that I gave, and that's where I got most of my research done for today's topic. And another aspect of freedom when it comes to food is people choose to buy the more expensive one, or the one that is more affordable. So this was a very very small take on something as simple as deciding between foods, because even then there is your freedom and limitations both can be seen in that one scenario where you are free to choose either this or that. Yet again, you are limited between the two for or however many options that this specific grocery store has. And building on that, I had a couple points written down. See, in today's meeting, we talked a lot about freedom of speech is almost everywhere in the world, but it is limited with certain proviso, which means provisions. We are free to go where we want, but we are limited to restrictions like airplanes, tickets, borders, boundaries, passports, visas, and all that stuff. We are free to act as we like, but so long as those actions with what is allowed for us in the limitations of law, we are free to think and say what we want, as long as it is not expressing any radical ideas. If you look at, there was a case a while back I studied in my one of my classes where a man had burned the American flag in front of the White House as expression of his and the Supreme Court that it was okay to do so right now. Even if I burn an American flag, sure, people are going to look at me negative, but according to the law, I can't. But on the same talking, I can murder someone and the law will be at my neck. They'll catch me. So these are the things that that I was touching up on, and I should have been more specific. I do apologize for that. But this is what I was expressing or trying to express, that we have freedoms, yes, but where there is a limit, a person can never be free, because you still have those bounds that you are within.
Thank you for expounding.
No problem.
Okay. So moving on a little bit quicker, I know Roddy's next. So go ahead, Roddy, even though you're muted right now. Is it my internet like kind of failing or?
No.
Or okay,
No,
Roddy.
it's-
Roddy. There you go.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so to bridge what Yusha was saying with Professor Mansi, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Professor Carrillo. One thing that I think and what I would say is that I think we need to take a deeper, well, maybe for next time, but a deeper look into the social learning of how freedom works. So and Professor Correa was explaining about this just a little bit about Vygotsky. And I'm actually studying Vygotsky in my in my lifespan growth and development class. And so one of Vygotsky's important works in psychology is something called the zone of proximal development, which is basically where if you think I would have to explain this visually first. So imagine that you are in water, okay, and you have a rock. And so when you throw the rock in the water, it makes ripples. Okay, imagine imagine it in frames and you're able to overlay it so you see the ripples in different stages. So the zone of proximal development basically is that you are capable of doing something, but you need a little bit of help in order to complete the task. So with the zone of proximal development, I bring this up is that for example, for me, I didn't start speaking until I was 5 years old. And because of that, I was not able to formulate memories until I was like 7, because I didn't start speaking fully in what you would say until I was 7, because I had to have early childhood intervention. So because I wasn't able to communicate at all, I did not have the freedom to express what I needed to say internally or externally. So I wasn't able to have the freedom of understanding my environment. Now I'm going to connect that with what Yusha is saying. So let's say with Yusha, with the food situation, that's going more into like a social determinant of health. So let's say, for example, we're in downtown Dallas near El Centro. That area has a socioeconomic disadvantage. So with Vygotsky's theory, and I'm bringing health and biology into this, if you are not able to give your child the adequate nutrients because of price, that child would be developmentally delayed, potentially, depending on how severe the lack of nutrients are, because you can't afford it. So then, because of that, and that with other socioeconomic factors, that child may not have the freedom to be able to meet their developmental goals because of the lack of zone of proximal development. So when you combine both biological factors such as food, financial factors such as income, and then you also have that social cultural perspective that Vygotsky gives, then you combine those together. And then you also have linguistics, but that's another story that Professor Mansi can go on all day. If you take those factors, then you have a more holistic picture of what freedom is, because freedom is really a biopsychosocial event, but freedom just has a language connotation to it. So that's my perspective.
Okay, thank you so much. I will address a couple of things before Orlando speaks. I'm gonna read this text. It's from Juana. It says, could it be that freedom is ever evolving because a person, place, or action has predetermined what we perceive as right and wrong? Hence, we have accepted the false sense of freedom. And right before also, I think, okay, so Yusha was mentioning that he doesn't think that we have touched upon the question of whether freedom can even exist without limitations, which I feel Orlando was touching upon it a little bit earlier. But since Orlando is about to speak, he can also kind of like consider that.
Okay. I was actually gonna try to answer what Juana was asking there. You know, could it be that freedom is ever evolving because person, place, action has predetermined what we perceive as right and wrong? And I kind of agree with that in a sense, but then I also have to think about it like, well, why is the Constitution in the U.S. still so prominent? You know, why do we have laws in the country? It's because essentially these sort of social constructs work. It's because these aren't just things that essentially were found one day and they're saying, hell, now they're in law. No, these are sort of these ever evolving ideologies and ideas and sort of that have come not from one person, but just a compilation of humanity as a whole. And so because that is the case, we have ourselves self-governed, not as an individuals, not as mere individuals, but as a society, like as a ever evolving humans. And so with that being the case, it's like we are essentially setting these boundaries, this focal point for people to kind of, although there is a limit on this freedom, but there's this freedom here where essentially if you exit these boundaries, you can find where you can have that negative freedom or possibly too much freedom that can be, led to chaos. And with that being the case, it makes me think, well, when you're finding this freedom, when you're finding this freedom in a sense to problem solve to current situations that have arisen that didn't exist before, or you're finding this freedom because you have seen better ways to do it. When it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to technology, you're not going to always stay with the same technology. If someone else a much more efficient method, essentially you're gonna either take it completely or make it your own. And so essentially what you're doing is you're taking these very stagnant concepts and essentially you're building, I guess you could, increments of freedom from them. And so essentially it seems like freedom maybe isn't this idea of boundless just pure freedom, but rather it's this idea of a initial relay from here to there to there to there to there, where essentially what we're working towards is sort of this perfection, I guess you could say, although I don't think that exists. Oh, are you trying to talk? Sorry.
Yes. All right. So yeah, thank you so much. That's a very good point. And I also know that Jie wants to speak also after you, and she's gonna include a little bit more of the sacrifice into freedom, which is exciting. So go ahead, Jie. It's your turn.
I just want to say just a simple language, simple words is, yes, we all agree with that we have no absolute freedom. So when we talk about freedom, we should consider of sacrifice. So sometimes, yes, we have freedom to do something, but we should consider of otherwise sound, otherwise rights. Although our have rights and protect and is protected by laws. So I think, for example, you can do something, yes, and you free this freedom and your rights is protected by laws, and otherwise, and others have same rights. So and protected by laws, and others have same freedom. So at that time, we should consider of sacrifice. For example, just for example, we have limited food. You can get it, and others can get it, and we all have freedom to get it. So at this time, I think we should consider sacrifice. I just think this.
Yes, I believe it's wonderful that you're bringing up the sacrifice portion of it, because in order to be able, to some extent, in some scenarios, to exercise more freedom, we need to give up certain part of freedom. So, let's say that in order for you to explore freedom in your career choices, you need to give up freedom of doing something else, because that means that you're going to be able to just kind of like expand more in this area. Just kind of like maybe see it as those trade points that is kind of like, well, I know I'm a millennial, so it's easier for me to connect it with like video games and stuff. There are other ways to do it, but they're like characteristics traits, like a strength, intelligence, magic, a defense, like resistance. So it's kind of like in order for you to be more like intelligent and like maybe like with more stamina, you have to give up like having maybe less defense and less resistance, because at some point it's kind of like you have just a certain amount of points that you can kind of distribute in this scheme, and you need to kind of like put them out whatever is fits better your particular situation.
Yeah. Sort of like the economic concept of opportunity cost, I guess you could say. Where essentially, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I like that you said sacrifice, because it does seems like it is part of freedom, at least in my point. There is also this idea that Carrillo is trying to connect, which is the concept of negative and positive freedom. I don't know if she wants to speak a little bit about it. Just let me know.
But I'm a
Yes,
little
no.
confused by that concept, though, this idea of positive and negative freedom, because wouldn't this idea of positive and negative freedom be kind of built on some kind of moral basis? And we've kind of seen morality to be sort of relative.
Well, I guess in some sense we can say that it would depend on the society, because each society has
Oh.
their own version of freedom.
Mm.
So I would say that it depends. We can kind of maybe just subject it to United States. So maybe it's like the negative is like, I don't know, do not marry more than one girl, or do not, like things like that. Like that will be negative freedom, because to some extent, based on the norms that we have created, in doing so, you're hurting somebody else's like way of living. Like that person will be less able to enjoy life because of your choice, or because of your exercising freedom in some extent. At least that's what I'm understanding.
No, I agree with that. But then also, I mean, in terms of like, yeah, we can narrow it down to the United States, but couldn't there be sort of an objective way to look at the world where basically, I know this is kind of a touchy subject and it's kind of not necessarily a line drawn there, but like if you look at other nations, I think there's a clear way to essentially observe oppression. You know, I would like an easy example is when you stop giving your people freedom of speech, freedom of press. I think those are easy examples of those are very base level things that base level freedoms that people should have. And I think that's where you can draw out negative and positive.
Yeah, and it's also, as we were talking last week, like we were mentioning like the benefits that, for example, countries like China are having, but at the expenses of certain limitations that for us is not good. Like, like for example, like the ability of them to start like assessing who might be more willing to revolt against the country. So based on that, they create these parameters that kind of like makes you maybe less able to have proper housing and things like that. But that way they can keep the whole people more in control, so it could, like the economy keeps growing like more. So it comes at certain expenses. For us it's kind of like, oh no, but maybe for them it's like, you know what, it's working, we have a better living that with more freedom. So it's something that is kind of like it's been set in, depending on the society that we're being like implementing these rules and stuff.
So I'm
Yeah.
sorry we keep going, but I kind of have a quick question to that because like so but what if this idea of personal sovereignty isn't like hasn't been introduced to the oppressed people? Like what if this idea of freedom they just never come to it? And you're a person or essentially your society has come to it. So is it your own responsibility to introduce it to them? Or would it have more negative effects than positive effects? You know,
Well,
or
I,
do
I,
you let
I
them
do
find it
think
on their
that you
own?
bring up something in there, and I think it's related also to the language that we were mentioning, because as you said, for them that could be somewhat freedom, but it's probably they haven't experienced a different system that maybe we also do not have. Um, that it kind of like allows you to have that control of the population, that control of the growth, without limiting so much the option that the people inside has. So it's kind of like we're still, that's why this is an interesting topic, is because we're still developing, we're still exploring what different outlets we have for freedom that allows us to live happier without sacrificing too much. We're just keep trying to have something that allows us to sacrifice less with maximizing the freedom that we get from it. So I guess that's why we also focus so much on bringing in health, trying to live longer than we normally would. So in that way, we can manage to experience more and maybe try to exercise more freedom, or I don't know. But I do know that Yusha is trying to say something. So go ahead, Yusha.
That was yeah. I mean, the way you put it, it was great, and I was gonna bring it back to the what's it called? That freedom is more of a relative perspective depending on where you're looking at it from. And as you mentioned, between Orlando, you and me, we had a discussion that some things in other countries are seen as free that are not here, and vice versa, because it's their perspective, and they're being dictated or directed by their form of controllers. That's not necessarily the government controllers, but even their environment, their taste, their acquired habits or whatever. They're still being monitored or controlled by those. For example, the freedom to wear some certain type of clothes, right? That is dictated by or directed by my taste. And even in something as small as picking out what to wear, you do not have as much freedom as one might think, because again, there are these factors that hone you or force you to go one way rather than the other. Today I'm wearing my favorite pair of shoes because they're comfortable, and I was not more inclined towards formal restricting footwear. So am I really free to do what I please, or is it set that I'm being directed by certain skills or certain tastes that I've acquired over the time I've been alive?
So can I respond to you guys real quick? So I kind of agree with what you're saying in terms of like cultural relativism, but I think there's a clear distinction between choosing what music I like to listen to, what clothes I like to wear, and what my socioeconomic government provides for me. Like, there's a difference between, yeah, someone else in another country might find it freedom to not wear something specific I would want to wear, but I don't think it's freedom when essentially they're forced to work a certain job because there aren't resources provided for them by their government. I don't think that's freedom, and I don't think that's a relative freedom for them. I think that's just lack of opportunity. And I think if they were faced with, oh, would you rather go to this other country where you have more opportunities and we're going to give you this ability to do it? I think 9 times out of 10 people in poverty who are forced into labor, I think they would take 9 times out of 10 they would take it. So then when you look at that and then you say, oh, well, culturally, relatively, they are free. That I don't think that's true. I think that brings that more of their government would want to force upon you to say that they are free, when in reality they're not.
And that brings us back into being those chained human beings in Plato's cave, which built up the courage or built up the curiosity to go and venture outside. But we just came back to sit down in front of the wall because that is what we knew. That is what we thought and found pleasure in our freedom being.
I get you. But then what if that's not the end there? What if there's an external force that maybe possibly it can be there? Easy example. What if in slavery, there was a Harriet Tubman going around freeing the slaves? Is that not something is that looked down upon? Was that not a good thing? Because for those slaves that didn't have that Harriet Tubman, guess what? Oh, it's easier for just to stay here.
And that's why I was referring to a freedom, any freedom being subjective. Because as we mentioned last week, if a person is born into something, they're more inclined to do it because that is what all they know. But if a person who is brought in from the outside in, for example, a free man who became a slave, he would find it more restricting, more difficult to exist with that being, with that sense of being. But if someone who was born into it, who does not know anything else, he or she would be more comfortable in that situation as opposed to someone who was brought in from being free to a slave.
But that
So
does that
not necessarily everyone wants a Harriet Tubman.
does that discount the objectivity that they are still enslaved? Because
That is
isn't
your
slavery
perspective from
isn't
being
slavery the
having
paradox
experienced
to
outside freedom.
Okay.
freedom?
One thing, bam. Let me interrupt for a second before we get into the cycle of being slaves of the same term or the same topic. There is this thing that there's been discussed, and after this, I believe we should consider to bringing up
Yeah.
the topic for next
Probably should.
sessions. All right, so
I think Manzi had something in mind for next week's topic because it's in relation to the event that we're having on Wednesday. So that's why I did not bring up the voting or anything.
On Wednesday or on Tuesday?
On Tuesday, I'm sorry.
Oh, so I was like,
Tuesday.
did I forget something that is supposed to happen next Wednesday?
No,
So
I'm sorry, it was Tuesday.
All right. So freedom, in terms of freedom, okay. So I think Rody was saying that he believes that freedom can be situational, which Ravido responded saying like it is interesting, kind of like asking whether or not there are situations where we actually experience sort of freedom, and if there is others that we aren't. Well, the word total freedom is kind of like, I don't know. I don't think we can experience total freedom, but I think we can feel that we get closer to it. So I guess something like that. But again, I don't want to expand too much because we do have to go into elections and stuff for the next topic. So let's hear what Mansi has to offer. Like us, politics.
Yeah, I don't have anything ready. I was just saying, just keep in mind that I do have a suggestion, of course, but yeah, we could still vote for sure. But yeah, just keep in mind that next week there might be a lot of people who've never been here before. So we might want to pick a topic that's easily discussable.
Extra credits?
No, it's because there'll be people at the conference, and I think they're going to stick around and hang out for the Philosophy Club meeting. I hope.
That's what I'm saying. The topic of extra credit is very.
Oh, the topic of extra
relatable. It's relatable.
Here's what we can do. We can start with the conference and just not tell them, exercise our freedom to not tell them that the conference is over, and then head over into the Philosophy Club meeting. And at the end of the Philosophy Club meeting, we choose to exercise our freedom to let them know that, hey, this was the end of the conference and the Philosophy Club meeting.
We could do that. That sounds like a good idea.
That's pretty. I like that idea. I was thinking though that maybe we should leave it. This is risky. Maybe we should leave it open and then just maybe respond to the different musings and presentations. Or here's my suggestion. This is a classic Philosophy Club topic. Always inspires a lot of talk. I don't remember the last time we've done it.
Sorry, I missed something. What were you saying?
I'm sorry, it just Yusha was like.
I was thinking the topic of friendship.
Oh, is that even a thing? Does that exist? Okay, sure. We can do the friendship. What exactly does friendship entails?
Well, especially on the heels of a conference, we're all becoming friends. We're sharing ideas. We're sharing thoughts in a way that's, I think, friendly. If nothing else.
Okay, so friendship, the power of friendship. Woo! Okay, so that's one.
Is Book 8 of Aristotle still in the curriculum, Manzi, for like the base level philosophies?
Well, yeah, I think he's a good place to start, but there's certainly room for critique in his notions of friendship. But yeah, I do like to start there, as you know.
Okay, so friendship is one. I'm gonna start writing it up. Does anybody else have something?
I'm good this week. I think I won like the past who knows how many.
Oh wow!
I won the last one. What are you talking about?
Actually,
what are you referring to, Orlando? I won the last one.
Last one, it was like we combined ours, so technically.
That's what Orlando is doing every week. He sees one good idea and he adds something to it, and there's it's a combined effort.
No,
yeah, right.
Said,
yeah,
look,
right.
No, because Professor Carrillo had said identity, but I said identity and environment, and everyone
and then
that one they
and
didn't
then
pick
I
identity. They picked the identity and environment.
and then I proposed the idea of limitations on freedom,
But
which
then
brings
no,
us
but
to
then
this
wait,
week.
no, wait. No, because you hadn't named it yet. It had just one, and then you named it.
Oh, come on.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
you
But
always
but
wait for
in
one
in
good topic and then you let me add up on it. And you add something and it's like you write it down as an individual idea and then like I won. Like
but
that's
but
so
but
cheesy.
in any case, no matter what angle you look at it from, the students' topics have won throughout history, and Professor Manzi's topics have been piled up in a corner. So I'll take that as a win.
Well, what we
Alright.
can do is we can add a topic. It's like friendship and something else. So that gives inherently like more value to that idea. You see?
I agree
Can we
with.
can we do
we are
something with
Rivero,
we
like what she's
we
saying.
organize that idea.
I agree
can
with
we do something with
Rivero, and I
like
guess Jeff said that. So
peer pressure and friendship, kind of something like where a lot of growing up kids do what their friends are doing, and like they dress a certain way, they eat certain foods, they talk a certain way, and that's all because of the company they're in.
Yes. Brody is bringing up friendship and social learning.
Oh,
Yeah.
So yeah, so for Yusha, I think that's a specific example for friendship and social learning. So I think in my experiences with the philosophy club, I think we work best if we give like a broad topic and then we go into specifics. It just seems like it flows better that way.
Mhm.
So that's why I said friendship and social learning.
yeah, I
That's a
like
good
that.
one,
I was
Yeah.
going to go even a bit more broad and say friendship and happiness. Do you think you need friends to be happy? Do you think you need to be happy with friends at a certain age? I mean, do you notice that maybe you have less friends now than you did before?
how about we replace
Still
happiness
friends?
with fulfillment? Because then people
Oh.
are gonna be like, happiness isn't real.
Well, now there's
That's
friendship.
someone
This
being
guy,
Orlando.
happiness is not real.
All right. I'll stop.
Well, yeah, something along those
Yeah, I think
lines.
so. Sense of self, like, can you find yourself through friendship?
Yeah.
I like the free flowing one, the one where we don't talk about
Okay,
anything.
you keep adding, but they're like I don't know exactly what to write at this point.
Let's do the
Let's
free
do.
flow.
I want to vote for free flowing. Like, however the conference ends, we can pick it up with the philosophy club.
But I'm talking about
Because
the
what if?
topic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can leave it open for next week's topic. We don't have to decide.
Sure, we could
We're gonna do free flow. Are we doing that?
free
Well,
flow
we're
and
gonna go.
whatever,
But I mean,
You
like,
want this
whatever
one,
happens,
Orlando.
happens.
the idea would be, but here's what I'm worried about with the free flow is because we might start talking about presentations that other people didn't see. And then they're just like, they're kind of out of the loop a little bit.
Oh,
You
yeah.
think so?
Okay, so friendship and fulfillment is
The face you made. Just do free flow. Just put free flow and then make it the only option, and then we're good.
Well, I
Okay,
mean,
so
we
I'm
can stick on
gonna
the identity path, friendship and identity. Do you really?
Orlando, you're limiting our freedom to choose.
But we're going into
I'm
complete
actually
freedom.
asking you to choose, and
So
you're
within this
saying
freedom,
free flow. That's like the least of free. Like
within the
just
free flow, friendship has the ability to arise if it is the best. Now, if it's not the best, that's not my fault.
I'm the only person here who's the word free is my first name. Okay, I know. Jeffrey,
Sure.
run away. Yeah. So yeah, I
you
just
also
I
you
vote
also-
friendship and identity. So how do you know yourself through your friends? It's sticking with the theme that seems to have had a lot of traction over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Do you feel like birds of a feather flock together? Why do you end friendships? Is it because you no longer relate to them? Do you find yourself? Do you discover who you are through friends? Does a friend know you better than you know yourself? Stuff like that.
Oh yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna put it there. It's friendship or the identity. Let's vote on it. It passed because we're doing free flow.
Wow.
So we're doing free flow. Oh my god, this is too
Right.
free. Can you sense? There is no need to
You know
put
that
any topics, so we're free. We're
the
free.
friendship
I was gonna
the friendship topic reminds me of Mark Marrow, I think his name is.
I still
He
have.
was a,
I
he
still
was
have-
a
By the
wrestler who
way,
had presented a speech to high school students, and he said, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." So I'm definitely bringing that up
Yeah.
in the next meeting.
What is it? Why we need friendship? I wonder where you got that topic from, Nancy.
Aristotle
Uh,
isn't necessarily right. That's my
Yeah.
point.
I don't
Yeah.
think so either. I think
By
it's
the way,
don't
I
think so,
texted you something just in case. To check your inbox.
Do.
I just want to see it is a good topic for next week. So today is a great topic and very great communication. Yeah. So I'm
Thank you.
just say I'm sorry, my English is so bad. Although I learned it for several years, but my spoken English is still so bad.
Okay,
have a lot
this is
ideas want to share with you all, but I cannot express it clearly, you know.
you're not free to express at your own like volition. But the only way that you can do it is practicing. So if you don't force yourself to practice, then you never get to do that freedom.
Yeah.
Of talking. So just keep talking. You
Okay.
see, I've the only issue that then you have to learn how to stop. Look at myself. Oh my god. Like sometimes I get like, shut up, Ferdinand. Shut up.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you very
oh,
much.
you're welcome. Don't you worry. But I do want you to talk more, which is also why I want you to read your inbox. I just texted you personally so you can actually see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Can respond, please.
Okay. Thank
Don't worry. Right. So with that being said, we have friendship. Yay, power of friendship and identity, like as a team. So I'm gonna have to think on a very creative way to draft that email. Like, yeah, guys, it's not the same email of identity. It's different. This one has friendship. Maybe I throw a picture there, to spice things up a little bit.
You
Well,
can
what?
always get a little like a little GIF of the Care Bears.
I think of the Caribbean.
Yeah, the Care Bears was a little cartoon in the 80s and 90s where they're like these like little bears that has symbols on their bellies. And in order to defeat the monster, they had to use the power of friendship.
Yeah.
Friendship.
Yeah, that's actually the thing that was like that was the
To defeat the monster of
innuendo.
Nancy, we
That
must
was my
unite.
reference. Just that my reference is in Spanish, not in English. But yeah.
Oh, don't pick on Professor Mancy. He's awesome.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. All right, yeah, we got to
It's-
wrap up here. We had
We're
27 hours.
wrapping up. We're wrapping up. We're ready to wrap up. This is official. We're good to go. It's just that
when
we are
you
exercising
want to
freedom too.
present something to others, right? You have to wrap it up nicely. You cannot just throw it in their faces. So we're trying to wrap it up as nicely as we can.
If anything, we're doing our job good, and you're saying that don't do it.
If this club fails, you know whose fault it is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, no, wait. He's probably looking himself like down here, so I'm gonna do like this. It's Mancy's fault. Am I pointing at you right now? I don't know.
No,
Whoever
Not
you
on my
are
screen.
in
point
the
down,
screen.
point down.
Just
Just point at the camera like that, because then for sure you're pointing at him. See?
Yeah. There you go. It's your fault. It's your fault. There you go. Oh, well, yes, we're
Right.
exercising freedom. We're
I take
exercising
all the
freedom right
success.
now, right here.
I think
All
we
right.
should
Thank you
take
so much,
away.
everyone.
We should take away Ferdinando's freedom to freely express himself.
Ooh,
Apply
I mean, you can try. You can try. People have tried many years. That's why I don't even care too much anymore.
All right, I'm signing off. You guys are not.
Thanks, guys.